Howdy, everybody, and welcome to the TexAgs High School Football Show, presented by Academy Sports and Outdoors. Academy has all your high school football road trip needs this season. Get the right gear for the long season with free curbside pickup today at Academy Sports and Outdoors. All right, what's up, everybody? Welcome to the TexAgs High School Football Show, presented by Academy Sports and Outdoors, going into round 3 of the playoffs, and I'm really excited about the upcoming slate of games, Jason, for this Thanksgiving week. But as always, before we get to what's coming, we got to talk about where we were and what we saw. And you were all over Dallas, and it's getting to be where I thought a huge statement was made by a state champion on Saturday night, and you were there to see it.
Absolutely. I'll start off right there. Saturday at the Star in Frisco. Got to see South Oak Cliff take on Melissa and come out with a 38-30 win. It was a game of runs by both teams. South Oak Cliff gets out to a 17-0 lead. With 5 minutes left, Melissa answers with 2 quick touchdowns to make it 17-14 right before the half. And then they intercept South Oak Cliff going into halftime. No time on the clock, nothing happened with that turnover, but it was still, something that gave a little extra kick, to that Melissa sideline. But right out of halftime, you got South Oak Cliff coming back, with a touchdown run by Khalil Ewell, and it kind of went back and forth from there. Melissa had a field goal. South Oak Cliff answers with a touchdown. Carson Maynard goes off with 2 big, touchdowns that he had to fight for the ball both times. Clutch scores that really allowed the score to be what it was. But it was a fun matchup. Jaden Shelton, 15 tackles, 3 tackles for loss, and an interception in the game. Big Texas A&M target. I want to say A&M was super high on his list before the coaching shakeup there. 2025 linebacker. Definitely want to keep an eye on. That's what happened on Saturday night, and they advanced.
I feel like every time you cover a sock game, I hear Shelton's name like a ton. Like he's like kind of reminds me of a Torian York to Anthony Smith. Like just they make a bunch of tackles.
And he's I would say he's a lot like Ty Anthony in that he's all over the field. He was dropping into coverage. I've got a highlight package of him on the site from the game where his coverage ability definitely made Melissa's quarterback Trevor Ham go, you know what? I'm wanting to get the ball out here to Carson Maynard, but I got to go the other direction. And made him completely change his train of thought there. But he makes plays in space. He comes up, takes on blockers, and gets into the backfield, gets pressures. He does a lot. But it was Danny Green had a big game. And I have to say, South Oak Cliff's Jersey game was on point. They not only on the front, they didn't have South Oak Cliff. They had Marsalis Boys, which is the street where South Oak Cliff High School is located on, and they also, on the back of the jersey, they didn't have the player's name. I didn't get the full story, but it seemed like they were the players picked some guys that had worn that number or somebody that they idolized or looked up to that had been part of the program in the past. Like Jaden Shelton had Dylan Turner Brown, who's now a linebacker at Florida State, and was a linebacker on the previous teams. So they had they didn't necessarily they were bringing some of that the last few years, guys that weren't there this year back into the mix as they make their playoff run.
Well, so that wasn't your only game, right? I mean,
No.
you had it booked up, man.
Yeah. And I'll get through these quickly here, but Thursday night, Pleasant Grove, Caddo Mills, 63-10. Pleasant Grove, one of the best in 4A, and I really wanted to get look at Lance Jackson. He worked both sides of the ball, scored the first touchdown, and also was just a guy. He always, if he's not in the quarterback's face, he's getting his hands up, and he had a couple balls that he got his hands on just because he's 6'6", and has tremendous length, and was able to cause an interception or make get in the passing lane and alter the trajectory of a throw. But yeah, they got out to a 56-0 halftime lead, and you had a running clock. A guy to keep an eye on. This wasn't by design, but Cade McFadden's one of my favorite, just all around football players in the state. A safety running back committed to Duke, and so he's one of those guys that let's say Mike Elko gets that coaching job at A&M. It wouldn't surprise me to see A&M take a look at. He's kind of a hybrid safety linebacker type and running back. He had an interception on the night, and he had a rushing touchdown, and just a gutsy, hard-nosed football player with a great mind for the game. So somebody to keep an eye on. And then on Friday night, I was in Allen for Forney and Frisco Lone Star.
Great game.
This one came down to the very end. This was very much a back and forth battle, and it was a showcase of two 2026 running backs that A&M fans are going to want to get to know. Lone Star's Davian Gross and Texas, one of the most recent Texas A&M offers, Forney's Javian Osborne. Both had spectacular games, and Forney got out, kicked the field goal early. Gross punches it in for a touchdown 2 plays later. And it just went back and forth. 12-7 halftime lead for Forney. Some defensive plays in the second half. Jordan Deck, a 2026 safety that people are going to want to get to know for Lone Star, had a big interception. Aaron Flowers, Oregon commit, had a huge interception to turn the tide there for Forney. And the biggest part of this game, it's 19-18, Forney with the lead, and I think there's about a minute and 45 seconds left. Lone Star goes for a 51-yard field goal, and they miss it. And so Forney gets the ball back. Javian Osborne scores 63 yards the next, I think it was 2 plays later. So a minute and 29 seconds left. They're only down 8 points. It's a brilliant move by Lone Star to at least give themselves a chance to extend the season, and they almost pulled it off. David Gross goes up for a great catch in a jump ball situation, and it comes down to a 2-point conversion with 23 seconds left, and Aaron Flowers leads the charge to stuff it right there at the goal line. You got Forney coming away with a 26-24 win to advance to play Richland on Friday. But Osborne finished with 200 yards on 32 carries and 2 touchdowns. Also had 21 yards and a key fourth down conversion late in the fourth. And then David Gross, nine carries for 35 yards, but 2 touchdowns and 4 receptions for 80 yards and a TD in the passing game. So,
wow.
Yeah. A big
Filled up the stat sheet. And you mentioned Richland. I mean, what a remarkable comeback they had to beat Barbers Hill. That was incredible.
Well, and Pleasant Grove, what do? They get to advance to play Carthage in the next round. So talk about one of the biggest non-championship matchups you're going to see around the state. That's one of them.
Yeah, and there's certainly a couple of them in Houston. On Thursday night, I was at Legacy Stadium in Katy to see Needville and Lumberton. What a huge slate of games on Thursday, but I did want to go down there and see them and just get a game in on Thursday. And, going into the game, I thought Lumberton had the advantage behind Brock Jackson on defense and Avery Yarborough, and really liked their quarterback, Lucas Powell. But, man, that game was dominated by Meadville and their ground attack, kind of a quarterback athlete, Keelan Sweeney, running back Deshaun Burton. I mean, they just got whatever they wanted to on the ground and did enough through the air to just keep the Lumberton defense from pinning their ears back and just like kind of methodically pulled away for a 52-28 win. Super impressive for Coach Giles and the Blue Jays as they advance there in 4A Division I. And then on Friday night, stay here locally, Magnolia came to town to play College Station, was really there to see Hunter Andrews. But in typical College Station fashion, the team of College Station, the Cougar team, kind of shined the brightest. And without starting running back Aiden Martinez-Brown, who's nursing a hamstring injury, they go to their backup running back, Wilson Stapp, and he rushes for 200 yards and 3 touchdowns. And it's just a typical College Station high performance. And it's, kids step up, and guys we don't talk about are making huge plays. And Arrington Maiden didn't have his best night, but he was good in certain spots. 2025 receiver tight end Jackson Verdugo had a touchdown catch and high-pointed some footballs to show his athleticism and his basketball background. So, College Station moves on. That's their 34th win in the postseason in 10 years of varsity football. That's an incredible rate to be winning postseason games for any high school, much less one that's just starting in their first decade. But something to watch for here. College Station plays Smithson Valley this week on the other side of the town. A&M Consolidated is going to host Cedar Park. If both of those teams win, and I said this when the playoffs started, Jason, I said, don't be surprised if we have an all College Station regional final in 5A Division I Region 3. And it could be that way. And what I've been told by a couple of people here in town is that if we get that rematch, it'll be happening right over my shoulder at Kyle Field next week. So that should be a really cool atmosphere for the two local teams. But, some scores from around Houston for me, Jason, that stood out. Excuse me. Let's start Cy-Fair Katy. I mean, I thought it was going to be really close going in. It proved to be that way. An overtime win for Cy-Fair over Katy. The first time the Katy Tigers have lost in round 2 since, I believe, 2003. That's an insane streak that was ended by Coach Miller and the Bobcats behind quarterback Trey Owens and wide receiver Owen Carter. 2025 defensive lineman Landon Rink, I heard, was awesome in the game. Like, he just continues to play extremely well. And kind of like what you said with Pleasant Grove, you win and you get Carthage. Cy-Fair wins and they get North Shore. And we're checking the health status on that North Shore team. I've gotten conflicting reports about Caleb Bailey. I've heard it's a knee injury. I've also heard it was cramps. So I guess we'll find out on Friday. But Cy-Fair Katy was an absolute banger. Went down to the wire. Houston Lamar edges Fort Bend Ridgepoint 31-28. I mean, that's HISD. We had wondered about Houston Lamar. Were they beating up on bad teams in HISD or were they legit? And that went over Ridgepoint. I mean, just confirm. I thought they were legit, but it confirms that they are indeed legit. They've got a huge task on their hands on Friday now with Atascocita. And then one more game. I believe Klein Kane was up like 28 or 30 points on Spring Westfield. Westfield rattles off 40-something straight points. I can't remember exactly what the numbers were. They win 55-41. And I believe Klein Kane was up by 30 points in that game at one point. Wow. So just an incredible comeback there for the Mustangs. And again, you mentioned Spring Westfield, I believe, in one, like our playoff preview show, like just a program that you look up and they're always 3 or 4 rounds deep and giving the big boys problems.
Absolutely. And you say giving the big boys problems.
They are one of the big boys.
Yeah, exactly. But you talk about comebacks, and we kind of touched on it there with Richland's comeback win over Barbers Hill. Nobody up here gave Richland a chance, just because Barbers Hill's been putting it on folks down there. And the fighting Jed Cates come back and knock out the win. Michael Turner turning in a huge performance, 45 carries for 309 yards and 4 touchdowns. And then he had another touchdown receiving. So, and one that I thought was going to be really close, Allen over Arlington Martin. This is a rematch of an earlier game, and I thought, excuse me, I thought this was going to be a closer ball game. And Martin had some pieces coming back that they didn't have before. Tristan Biddle at quarterback and Bergantz at quarterback and as a running back have been a very intriguing weapon for Martin. And man, overtime 36-33 Allen win, big for that program. And another team that's really coming on that I've kind of discounted, Lancaster
Mm.
with a win over Wakeland, uh, 35-19. Very impressive the first couple rounds of the playoffs. You know, they've had some issues with just with consistency and not hurting themselves. But Kawan Lacey is doing some big things, and Lancaster's rolling right now. They moved to take on Longview, so in a district
Yep.
rematch in the third round of the playoffs.
Well, okay, so we got to start looking ahead to this regional semifinal round. The teams are dwindling, but I think it also provides us a chance to see, for me, like I'm going to have a triple header. Like I like when these games get late in the playoffs because they'll do these
Yeah.
back to back, games at certain places where you can catch multiple games in a day. So first of all, we'll start with you. What does your weekend look like in Dallas?
Well, last week, I had the three games, one each day, and this week I'm just going with one. I'm keeping it simple on Thanksgiving, and I'm not going to be in. I'm going. I'm going to Athens, Texas, and I'm
Mm-hmm.
going out to see Timpson and Honeygrove in one of the biggest two-way matchups you'll see. Uh, this side of a state championship game. Terry Bussey, just a phenomenal effort. If you didn't see his stat line from last week, it's it's Terry Bussey ridiculous. I mean,
Yeah.
it's normal for him. It's ridiculous for anybody else not named Terry Bussey. Um, you know, 16 yards a carry, 60% completion rate, over 450 yards of offense, and 7 touchdowns and 10 tackles. Just 10 tackles on defense. But they take on um, Honey Grove with Raylan Morris, who is, you know, uh, over 1,400 yards rushing and has 7 offers as a 2026 running back. Just an explosive, dynamic player. And another guy to keep an eye on for Timpson, JJ Garner is going to be back this week, from what I understand, and he is just as versatile and terrifying for opposing defenses and offenses as Bussy is.
Yeah, and I'm super interested to see. I saw Rylan Morris at a camp in
Mhm.
Houston, and he really jumped out for a lot of us there. We didn't know anything about him being from Honey Grove, and he certainly, he's made a good account of himself statistically this season. So he's kind of packing up his profile as a prospect of also being a player and being productive. And so I would guess if Honey Grove's going to have any chance, they're going to need to kind of ride him and eat the clock and take possessions away from Timpson and that explosive offense. But I'd lean toward the Bears, but it's an interesting matchup, certainly. And what you mentioned about Terry is like it's almost more newsworthy whenever he doesn't have stat lines
Exactly.
like that, which is unfair to the kid, but just ridiculous. For me, on Friday, I'm going to do the triple header at NRG Stadium. Starts at 10 a.m., which
Hmm.
I can't remember one of these starting that early, but Fort Bend Hightower takes on CE King. Then you go to the big one right there in the middle, Cy-Fair against North Shore, and then the nightcap, Atascocita against Houston Lamar. And then on Saturday, I'm going to go over to Tomball and check out Summer Creek
There you go.
as the Bulldogs, who have just been rolling through everybody. They take on Houston Stratford, a really surprised Houston Stratford team in that 6A Division Two Region Three. So I've got 4 games, but I love the idea of having 3 in a day.
Yeah,
It's kind of gets you
absolutely.
ready for the state championships here in a couple of weeks. But I'm kind of really I'm pushing for NRG to do this week
Oh yeah.
0 or week 1 of the season and have a Friday Saturday triple header. They did it last year
Hmm.
in the Alamo Dome. I went out
Hmm.
there and saw a triple header on a Saturday. I'd be all for the city of Houston doing that and just pit the big boys from all sides of
Yeah.
the city and let
Well,
them go and see if they can turn that into an annual event. I would really like that.
in Dallas, you've got some big games at Arlington's Choctaw Stadium. If you want to get out there and check them out, there's going to be some real, slobber knockers. You got the Money Bowl, South Lake Carroll versus Highland Park, Friday at 2:30. Kicking off some action there, and then you got Aledo and Red Oak in the nightcap at 7:30.
That's a big one.
Battle of undefeateds, and it should be a lot of fun there. And then Saturday you got Byron Nelson Coppell at 3:30 in Choctaw. So
I got one more I'm keeping an eye on. 5A Division II.
yeah,
Montgomery Lake Creek against Port Neches Groves. I went back and forth on picking one of them as my state champion, but I would imagine that one is going to be an incredible game. And they're playing at CE King on the northeast side of Houston. If I know anything about P&G, they're going to put a lot of people in that place. But I'll be at NRG, but keeping my eye on that game for sure.
Also, hey, I can't believe neither one of us mentioned this one, and I think it's because it's a little out of the area is where it's going to be played. DeSoto, Willis.
Oh yeah,
6A D2.
Points.
Friday night.
Remember a couple of years ago, DeSoto played Spring in Waco, and it was a crazy back and forth affair. A ton of points scored that DeSoto won toward the end of the game. The offensive coordinator that day for Spring is now the head coach at Willis. Yeah. So they've have some success putting points up against an uber talented DeSoto team. They're going to have to do it again because DeSoto just looks like a one-way train.
Well, let me tell you, that DeSoto defense is a different animal than we've seen in the past. So it should be a very intriguing matchup, that DeSoto defense and that Willis offense for sure.
And one more small school, and then I'm keeping an eye on Silsbee, Belleville. Belleville is blasting people. Silsbee played last week, got a 35-10 win without Draylon Miller. He didn't even suit up, nursing an ankle injury. They're going to need him at full 100% health. Belleville has 3 1,000-yard rushers, and then a defensive tackle that we've mentioned in DJ Sanders, who is playing as good as anybody in the state of Texas in the small school ranks. I mean, he's just a elite prospect for a 4A school. You don't see, you go to the big 6As and you don't see 6'3", 300-pounders move around like DJ Sanders. So big test for Silsbee, who's been ranked number 1 all year, and Belleville, who has just, I mean, I couldn't tell you, the closest game they played was probably back in the preseason, pre-district. So it's been a while. So we'll see, when those teams that have been rolling through everybody, when they get tested, how do they respond? But I'm looking forward to it, man. And it's hard to pick games now because there's so many good ones. It's hard to pick where you want to go and who you want to see, but kind of narrowing our way down there to Jerry World in a few weeks. And
getting close.
I know. And so looking forward to it. Jason, hope your voice gets better. Hope you feel better.
I'm all right. We're going to be okay.
And have a very happy Thanksgiving to yourself and everybody out there watching.
Absolutely.
For Jason Howell, I'm Ryan Brauninger. That's the TexAgs High School Football Show.